Alright guys, got a couple things we want to go over today. This is the bearing puller kit that I had, which just got a nice long shaft on the puller, which helps, but these are very short, and with this clutch there's a bearing actually all the way down in the bottom of it right here, and there's no way that will reach down in there to get it. Plus you can also tell that this one has already bent and does not work very well, even for bearings that it can reach. So we bought a different kit, which you can see some primary differences in it. One, it's a lot longer. So that will reach down and get into that bearing so that we can pull it out. So we're going to test this out, see if this bearing kit, blind bearing puller kit, will work better. We're also going to be tackling this mess, getting the broke oil plug out and repairing this. And then these are some parts that we've got that need to be powder coated. We're going to do them black, so we can put them back on the bike. And foot pegs came in, so we're going to go ahead and get the frame up on the stand so we can start getting parts bolted on. I don't know if you guys can see down in there, but the bearing's actually below this gap here, so you can't even get to it to try to push it out. But we'll see what we can do about getting that out. Alright, we'll go ahead and put a little bit of heat on this, try to help it out. There we go. She's out. And that kit did not seem to bend, so I believe we've got a much better blind bearing puller kit there with that one. I'll put a link to it in the description of the video. So we've got the bearing out. So the cases are ready to start reassembling, except for the clutch case, or clutch cover. That was a lot of work put into that when it could have just simply been pushed through the frame. So we'll get a razor and a brush, clean that up, but for now we're going to go ahead and get the plug out. I've tried driving a flathead screwdriver down in there, turning it, soaking it, it's still not working. So what I'm going to do is drill some of the material out of the center so I can go down beside of it with a screwdriver and try to pop it out. We'll see how that works. So drilling the holes in it allowed enough of a gap that I believe we can pull the threads out, the threads of the rubber out away from the aluminum and push them through just like that. Now we can clean that up and put the new cap in. Alright, so we've got it all cleaned up. We're going to build this area right here and fill the hole. Flip it over, do the same thing. We've got some material to grind down and see if we can't get this smoothed out and then textured like everything else. So let's see what happens. Alright, so we got the clutch cover finished. It's not perfect. There's a little bit of right there where I couldn't get in to clean it off. But all in all, it'll hold oil. And I think it looks pretty damn decent for only like the third time TIG welding. So that case is good. We'll be able to put both motors back together. And now loosen it back up just a little. All right, got a couple different breakdowns here on these old Kx250s. So when we go to take these bushings off to replace them, simplest way is just spread them a little bit, pull them off. This washer is not a replacement item in the kits, so we will have to reuse that. Put that back in the stack of the new parts, and then pull our oil seal and dust seals off. Put them in the box along with the O-rings and everything, so we don't get old parts mixed up with new parts. Alright, and we've already got All the internals cleaned out of this one. It's cleaned out. The bottom valve is out, so we've got it cleaned up, and show you guys how we had to do that. So the way this fork is set up internally, you cannot spin the valve body out of the bottom because it is tied into this part right here. So you can hit it with an impact, but then what it's going to do is it's just going to start spinning. So we've got to use a special tool that we made out of a jack handle. And if you need specifics on measurements for this, Greg Hitchko has a great video on how to make this tool. So I'm not even going to go into all that. But we'll take the plastic guides off. Slide that tool down in there so that it's in these 4 notches here to hold it. And so to keep from having to hold this and keeping it from spinning, I've just got a hole through it there to hold it on the bench. That way I can keep pressure on those teeth. And then the valve body comes right out. So obviously that's going to need cleaned out. New crush washers. I don't know if you can see the amount of debris that's built in this thing where it sits down on the bottom. One of the many things that they've gotten better with over time as they build stuff. You don't realize how much things have changed till you start tearing into old bikes like this. But we'll get this cleaned up, get this tube cleaned out. So we'll pull that tube out, and then so those notches right there are what we were using that tool to hold, so we could spin the valve body out of this. So we'll get this stuff cleaned up real quick, and then we'll be ready to start the assembly process. But I wanted to show you guys how that came apart. See if we can get these back together. So we got our valve stem cleaned up. We're going to reinsert that. Put it back on the holder. And while we got that off, we're going to take this copper washer off. Okay, and put the new one on. Alright, put this little blue Loctite on there. Make sure that doesn't come in contact with this washer. seats up in there so we're not cross-threading. Alright, and this should be torqued to 40 foot-pounds. Alright. Now that we've got that installed, we can take our little special tool off. Got our rod, slide back in. We've got our spacer. Now you are tightening it against plastic, so you don't want to kill it because you will break it, but snug that down so it's not going anywhere, and that part of the assembly is back together and ready to go. See how much mess I can make right here. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is put our seals on. So we're going to take our little seal bud here, slide that over our sharp edges so that we're not cutting the seals. First one will be the dust seal, which has got the lip on it to set on the part of the outer tube. And we want to make sure that it is facing down the fork. And then the retainer spring on the oil will go up inside of the fork tube, and the small lip will face down. So make sure that's lubed up properly. Slide that on. The washer goes on. Get oil all over everything so you can't get it off. There we go. And then the larger will go into this groove here. Spread that just a little. Snapped into place. So all of that is ready. All right, she is seated. Take our little locking clamp here, or spring. New O-ring on there. spring base to keep it from eating into the aluminum. Alright, that is down. Of course, I could have put the oil in before I did all that, but I really don't have the clamps set up to do that properly. So we'll take 500 milliliters or cc's of fork oil, get that in there. And we can still work that valve up and down to get the air out. Now if you've got them completely tore apart and cleaned like this, you can do it by volume, but you can also look in the shop manuals and find a depth so that it will tell you how far from this lip the oil should be. So if you're just adding some fluid to them, you know what you're working with. Alright, so with the powder coat on these, it's going to be really tight going up in there. We don't want to scratch it and leave big scratch marks here. So I went ahead and got screwdrivers in between here. Hopefully it'll go in right. And we want to make sure, pick the best looking part of that for the outside, that we get the right one. So we've got the brake holder and mechanisms on this side, which is right. All right, get that spread apart a little bit more. Nice and easy. Get it right where we want it. Putting the air relief valve in front of the handlebar. All right. I think that's looking pretty damn good. So now we've got the forks done. We're still waiting on the shock. So we're going to get the steel components on the linkage. I know it's an old bike. Powder coated, so they're ready to go on. And then we'll start putting the rims together. So let's get set up for powder coat.